listening to an extra shot episode on the Project Zion podcast, a shorter episode that lets you get your Project Zion fix in between our full-length episodes. It might be shorter time-wise, but hopefully not in content. So regardless of the temperature at which you prefer your caffeine, sit back and enjoy this extra shot.
Hello, and welcome to the Project Zion podcast. I'm your host, Carla Long, and I am super duper excited about our guest today. She's a very dear friend, and she's from the land down under, and her name is Sue Palmer. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Carla. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad to see you. So, Sue, we all want to know, tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are.
Well, my name's Sue Palmer, and I've been the pastor of the Open Door congregation in Sydney, Australia, for the last 21 years. And I'm sitting in the Open Door building at the moment, which is a shared building. It's a preschool building, but we have access to a space at the end of the building, which is our worship space. So we've got Rainbow Cross above us, and then we've got just a shared facility outside for a foyer and coffee, and it's very laid back. It's not like a regular church building, which is kind of good in a way because it's very informal. Yeah. So
that always makes me feel more comfortable too, the informalness. Sometimes, like when you have pews and a pulpit and a stage, it just feels a little bit like you have to be straight like this. And that's not who you are. You don't want to have to do that. It's easier. It's nice to be easy and open and free. So I'm happy about that for you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we have a vision statement that talks about how our congregation is like the stable that Jesus was born in, where it's comfy and cozy, maybe a bit smelly. Hopefully not, but just very real, and where people can come and kick off their shoes and feel like it's okay just to be who you are and feel at home. So, and obviously too, the stable is a great image because it represents new life and new beginnings. And that's something too that's very important to us as we journey with Jesus in our lives and look at what that transitioning and that change means for us. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that analogy. So you've already told us a little bit about Open Door. Tell us a little bit more about Open Door. What is interesting about Open Door? What's fun about Open Door? All that stuff.
Okay. Well, Open Door has never really been like other Community of Christ congregations, mainly because we started out as a coming out group 21 years ago, 1999, when Matthew Naylor was our region president. He put a small group of us together and asked if we would be interested in doing something to help the LGBT community. And so this premises that the church owns out in Western Sydney was available, and we kind of became a bit like hermit crabs and moved into this building, and we've been here ever since. But we started off meeting on a Thursday night. We advertised as a spirituality and coming out group, and we had one new lady come along on the first night. Her name's Kathy, and she thought it was tarot cards because we had all said it was spirituality. And she was a bit disappointed because we didn't have any tarot cards, but she really enjoyed our time together. We just laughed and had coffee and talked and really got to know each other. And she kept coming back for the next 6 months of that year. And by the end of that 1999, we had decided that our name was going to be the Open Door. And by then, I think we'd started to meet on a Sunday evening. And we'd only had the one person coming along for that 6 months. So in December, we had a second person turn up. And this was very exciting because it meant that our numbers have now doubled pretty much. And and that's the way it's always been with Open Door. We don't have huge numbers of people coming along, but those who do come it's really very much about relationship. And suffice to say, Kathy, our first person who came along, really liked our second person that came along, Megan, and by the time of the Mardi Gras parade, they had become an item. So our first two people hooked up, and and they're still together today, which is such a great story and such a great way to introduce the Open Door. But it is more than a dating place. But it's a wonderful story. The first two women that came along to it wasn't a congregation at that point, but over the years, there has been an evolving, and by 2008, we were officially recognised and opened as a congregation of Community of Christ. Yeah.
Oh, this is a very good story. I like this story a lot. So, so how many people do you have on any given Sunday?
The numbers fluctuate. I guess with COVID this year, our numbers have kind of grown because we've been online. So because we've had people tuning in from all over the country, which has been really lovely. But before COVID, we were probably getting 10 to 20 people on a Sunday night. So it's not huge numbers. But I guess over the years too, there's been times when I've been very concerned about numbers, and I guess most pastors are. Numbers are important. It's one of the first questions people always ask me is, how many people come? And I'm coming to realise that it's really not about how many people are there. It's more about our relationship with each other and our relationship with God, and how well we're looking after each other. So
I completely agree. It is all about those relationships. Sometimes in a bigger congregation, I feel like the relationships are not as strong, really. So, I mean, Adam Wade actually once said to me, he's like, I don't think we were ever meant to be a big church. I think that we were meant to be a church that loved each other and loved every single person. And I'm like, oh, can you believe that came out of Adam Wade's mouth? Like, really?
Yeah, well, I think that Jesus chose 12 disciples, not 212. So that kind of gives me some hope. It's okay.
Absolutely. Oh, so you still meet on Sunday nights or you meet on Sunday mornings?
No, Sunday nights. We did start Sunday mornings just in the last 12 months, only because one of our congregations had closed and there were some members who kind of needed somewhere to worship. So we trialled a Sunday morning, and we may go back to that again too, but we'll see what happens. Yeah.
So do you still consider yourself like a coming out group, or are you a group that really supports the LGBTQIA plus community? What does that look like?
I don't know really if we ever were a coming out group, because we never really had people coming along. I mean, we have had over the years, there have been people that have been in that coming out phase. But we definitely have always been an LGBTIQA congregation. But we're a congregation that accepts and loves people no matter who they are. And one of our dear members and friends, Denise, once said, we take anybody. And she kind of said it jokingly, but it's true. And we try to live by that. We do. We take anybody. And we've had people from such a wide variety of backgrounds, faith backgrounds. Not pretty much every denomination you could think of, or every religion you could think of, has at some point been represented in our congregation. And people from no faith background who have no idea what church is about, but just want to connect with people and be loved, really. And that's really one of the joys of Open Door, is the diversity of thought. And, I remember, ages ago now, but the offering was getting collected one night, and the person collecting it had a can of Coke in their hand as they walked around. And another night I remember one of our ministers from another congregation was attending and going to give some ministry that night. We were sitting in a circle, and it was after 6 o'clock. And she said to me, "What time are we supposed to start?" And I said, "We have started," because there were still people outside. There were people out doing their thing, and it was just that evolution of this group coming into being a congregation has been very exciting and fun. Yeah.
So it sounds like you do things in a little bit of a different way. And I love that. I always encourage like my worship planners and people, I'm like, do something crazy. I'm totally fine with it. So what does do you have something called a normal worship service? Or are they all kind of different? What's it like to worship at the Open Door?
We do have a format, and again, the format has evolved over the years. We always end with prayers. We always end with people expressing a need for prayer, or somebody that they know of who needs prayer, who needs God's blessing. And then we have some quiet prayer time, and people can pray out loud if they want to. But since we've been on Zoom, it's been a little bit more sanitized. But we hope to get back to the messy, unpredictable church once we start gathering again physically. But yeah, that is part of our format, and we are very interactive. We enjoy hearing from each other during our time together, and I think that's probably one of the important things, that people coming into this congregation, there's a sense of needing to be heard, and needing to find a place to fit in, and needing to be useful, finding a niche that is theirs, that they can do this, and finding that purpose. So, yeah, and I guess that's what it is. It's that interaction which gives people an opportunity to speak and be heard by others.
I have found that to be very true, that, when you were a kid, it seemed like it was really easy to have conversation with people and have important conversation with people. But it feels like as you get older, those times are fewer and farther between. And people don't listen to each other anymore. And there's just not really a chance to sit down and really, really talk and have someone know who you truly are. And so what you offer, Sue, is a gift. It's a gift for people to get to speak from their heart and speak their truth and be listened to. I just love that you do that. I think that's a really, really important ministry that we think might not be important, but I think it might be the most important.
Yeah, we've got to be very careful to guard that and not let that disappear, because we, like any congregation, it's much easier just to have somebody get up the front and, run an order of service, and we've been guilty of that too, especially on Zoom. And pretty soon, we pretty much have an audience of people rather than a congregation of worshippers who are taking an active part in the worship. And there's a big difference there, and that is the challenge, is to maintain that interactivity so that people are owning the worship themselves and engaging in that worship time together.
So how do you facilitate that? What kinds of things do you do? Do you ask questions? Do you sit in a circle? Do you still sing hymns together? How is this whole thing facilitated?
Well, over the years, I guess I'm quite often the person presiding or facilitating, and it's really just about sort of doing what you're doing now, and offering questions for people to talk about, have an open-ended question, and off we go, and then trying to rein them in when it gets all too much, and it can be quite fun, and it is exciting because you just don't know what people are going to say next. But it's really great because that's how people do get to know each other. And when we have a congregation here that they haven't grown up with each other, unlike other congregations where you've known each other for many, many years. You've known their parents or you've known their children. And here we've got people coming in for the first time who don't know each other at all. And so giving people time to talk and get to know each other is really important. Yeah.
I think it's one of the most important things. So do you follow like the lectionary scripture? Do you talk about the Bible? Do you have like any kind of Bible study or a book club or anything like that happens either?
Yes. So we do follow our Community of Christ lectionary each week, and we have usually lately we have someone that gives the message, and we have the prayer for peace, and we have all of those elements of worship that are fairly traditional. But that's only been recently. And again, this whole notion of letting the Spirit breathe is so important so that we don't get tied down to just this is the way you do church, and letting that openness be there so that people feel connected. And in that prayer time, being able to bring ourselves, before this cross behind me, and remember that, we are loved with a love that is amazing, and that this God is a God who does intervene in our lives, and just come together in prayer to our loving God is such an important part of what we do, and probably the pinnacle of our Sundays together. So we also have a Tuesday night group called ESP, which is Eat, Study, Pray. And we don't do much eating online, but it's just a chance for us to do a little more study together on a particular theme or topic and have prayer time together. Our social times have been always very important too. We often have dinners together or catch-ups, coffees and things like that. But not so much lately, but hopefully we'll get back to that again too. Yeah. And so those are pretty much the things that keep us going as a congregation. And we are looking to a visioning process which was begun by the Sydney pastors a few years ago. And we are looking to the future of where we're heading in terms of are we going to be staying here in Cranebrook, which is our suburb here in Western Sydney, or are we looking to maybe even one day move premises and find a place that's closer into our Penrith CBD where we could perhaps open more of a cafe-style building where we can be there 7 days a week as a 7-day-a-week church, and connect even more with people who are sensing that isolation and need for a faith community.
Sue, that sounds awesome. And I can already picture you in that cafe church setting, just chatting with people and helping them feel welcome and loved. Oh my gosh. I just got chills thinking about that it would be so cool. I don't know if you found this at Open Door, but in the Salt Lake City congregation where I'm the pastor, people come to us all the time from certain other denomination, and they really find the enduring principles to be really wonderful. And I don't know if that has been true for your congregation, but the enduring principle of worth of all persons and all are called, and a lot of those have just been so meaningful to our people. Has that been true in the Open Door congregation as well?
Yeah. For those who have invested some time and have stuck around, because, we have people that come and go, and we have people that have come and stayed. And for those that have come and stayed and have gotten to know Community of Christ a little bit better, they love the Doctrine and Covenants, and they love the enduring principles. They love our mission initiatives, and they're so good. We, in fact, the other night for our Bible study, we looked at the mission initiatives, and it's great because the people that we're interacting with are people who have never known Community of Christ before, and they're finding this church to be a gem. So many people have come from denominations where they've been rejected because of their sexuality or whatever, and here's a little church where they're finding their place, and where there's an openness to God. And and there's an openness to new ways of thinking, and it's okay to think differently, and people still love you even though you may not all agree with each other. And I know sometimes that's not the case, but but it's true. Like we don't always agree with one another, but we put our relationship with each other at the top of the ladder, and that's different. And I've grown up in the church, and there's so much that I realize now I've taken for granted over the years, just from mixing with people from Open Door who they have no idea that there's this connection that we have in our church with each other that is just unparalleled. We have this relationship and this love that is really amazing and very special.
I totally agree with you. Since being here in Salt Lake, women in the priesthood, we started ordaining women in the priesthood in Community Christ when I was 7 years old. And so there's never really been a time in my life when I didn't think that I could be a minister, or when I didn't see women up front. And so I've never in my life thought that I was a second-class citizen at church. But millions, if not billions of people in the world think of themselves, women, for instance, or people who are LGBTQIA or whatever, think of themselves as second-class citizens. And that is simply not true in Community of Christ. And it is mind-blowing for people. Like, it blows people's minds. When I was pregnant, I told people that I was the only pregnant bishop in all of Utah. And they thought that was just hilarious, to have a woman bishop who's pregnant. That's crazy, And so, I mean, it just blew people away to have, and like, there are women in the congregation who look at me and they're like, I want my daughter to grow up the way you grew up, Carla. I want them to know that they are, they can do anything they want to do, and that they are welcome to, and so on and so forth. So I think we are incredibly blessed, or however you want to call it, to get to grow up in a place where we always felt our worth and we knew our worth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very true. And, I recall back in 2016 here when marriage equality was getting voted on. And I said to our mission president, Ben, can we please, once it was voted on in Australia, we went through that whole process of, all the yes campaign and all the huge no campaign that was going on. And it was just a really horrible time, to be honest. And I remember talking with Ben and saying, if it does come through in Australia, the yes vote wins, do we have to go through another vote with the church? Because we got voted on for ordination. We've been voted on, in the country here now. Can you spare us another vote? Because it's horrible. And thankfully, because we'd already been through that process with ordination, I don't know, but we didn't have to do another vote. And that was just really great. And we now have marriage equality as well, which is terrific. Yeah.
I remember that day in Australia. I celebrated with you from far, far away, of course, but I celebrated with you because that journey was a long journey in Australia. And like you said, painful. Was it hard for the people in Open Door to go through that?
Yeah, we talked about it a lot because there was so much hate going on, especially in social media, that we talked about, the need to stay off social media and just don't get caught up with it and all of that. But, so we got through it and we were thankful for that in the end. But it was soon after that, I've got one little story to share with you about a lady named Amanda. And I spoke to her prior to the podcast to ask her permission to share her story. She started coming along to Open Door probably maybe 2.5 years ago now. And it was her psychologist that had told her about Open Door, because Amanda was right at the very beginning stage of transitioning from male to female. And she had attempted to end her life a couple of times. Well, I'm not sure how many times, but she really needed to have some support in her life. And I remember the first time I had a phone call from her, and she was very worried about coming to the church. She was very anxious about coming to the church dressed as a woman. And I encouraged her and told her that, she will be fine. It will be safe and supportive, and it would be great to come as a woman, because that way people will get to know you straight away for who you really are. And that's what she did. She braved it. That first time, for so many newcomers turning up and walking through that door, the first time is very scary, but she did it. And since that time, she's just blossomed and has become an integral part of our congregation, and was baptised earlier on in this year up at the Green Cathedral up at Foster there, where Pastor Wendy is. And so we were just able to share in that baptism with the wider church community, and it was just very special. And then she and another special person in our congregation were confirmed the following week here. I just wanted to let you know that that's just one of so many stories of people over the years who have come and found a connection with and an acceptance that God's love is for all people, and that the church's doors are open. So I just hope that we can continue to be that open door for people like Amanda, who just desperately need this love. I don't know if you probably have sung hymn number 350 as it's become one of our best favourite ones, top 10. We are a family of faith. We have a Saviour who's kind. We lift each other up. We leave no one behind. And it goes on, if the least of us should stumble, we all feel the pain. Community of Christ is our name. And we love that hymn, and we hope that we can live up to those words in it too. Yeah.
Sue, you're making me cry. I loved hearing the story of Amanda. I love that she was baptized up at the Green Cathedral. Oh, that, like, I can picture it in my head, and it just makes me so happy that she has found a place. I think that if the only thing Community of Christ ever does is help people find a place in a spiritual home, then we have done exactly what we're called to do. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing at Open Door.
God. Thanks be to God. And, I know God has kept the door open for these many years. And I pray that the good Lord will continue to do that, not just here, but around the whole world, that we are going to continue to be faithful to God just as God is faithful to us.
Absolutely. And Sue, I know that it's a difficult job to be a pastor. I know. And you've done it a lot longer than I've had. I've only done it for 2 years, but I just want to say publicly how much I appreciate what you do. It's a really hard, but it's such an important job. And to have someone like you, who is kind and compassionate and understanding, be a part of a ministry that can be hard at times and challenging at times, is just so wonderful. So thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me on here today too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you. So before we sign off, is there anything else that you want to tell me about Open Door that I didn't ask you or that you wanted to talk about and I forgot?
No, I think I'm good.
Well, you've already made me cry, so I'm going to go ahead and check that one off. And have a wonderful worship service tomorrow.
And you too. Well, the following day, I would imagine. But
that's
anyway.
Right. It's Friday here. It's Saturday there. Sue, it was wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you, and God bless.
Thanks for listening to Project Zion Podcast. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or whatever podcast streaming service you use, and while you are there, give us a 5-star rating. Project Zion Podcast is sponsored by Latter-day Seeker Ministries of Community of Christ. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are of those speaking and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Latter-day Seeker Ministries or Community of Christ. The music has been graciously provided by Dave Hines.